I think there's a very real possibility that we don't even see an opportunity for Trump to be reelected following this news. From Timcast.com, Oathkeepers leader and 10 members charged with seditious conspiracy over January 6th. And there it is. We heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene that there was going to be an attempt to disqualify members of Congress and maybe even the president himself. There's now an organization out of North Carolina filing a lawsuit saying that Madison Cawthorn is no longer, he's disqualified from running for re-election because he incited insurrection against the United States.
Wow.
Now they have their sedition charges, finally. And a lot of people were saying all throughout last year, and we've even said this, there's no insurrection charges, trespassing, come on. Well, you know what I think now? I think they sat on these charges because they wanted to make sure sedition was fresh in the minds of the American public in an election year. And so here we go.
Yep.
They're going to ramp up. They're going to start claiming, see, it was sedition. Therefore, anyone who participated in the rally, anyone who helped organize or in any way was associated with it, you have committed incited insurrection and you can't hold office. They're going to go after Trump. They're going to go after Marjorie Taylor Greene. And they're already going after Madison Cawthorn. You just throw in more people. Anybody who's opposing the establishment.
Well, the timing here is very odd. It took them 1 year. 1 year to press charges. I mean, what was going on here? This is extremely unusual to the point where a lot of people were saying, well, the Oathkeepers, they must be feds. Stuart Rhodes is definitely a fed. Well, now he's getting some serious, federal charges, which doesn't look like he's a fed here. But again, 1 year? Does it? It's just mind-boggling.
Kinzinger was like, Ray Epps was only telling people to go into the Capitol. He didn't do it himself, so that's fine. But Trump held a rally where he said, be strong, and that's incitement. This guy's a crackpot. But you can see that it's agenda-driven. And the Ray Epps thing, that's his name, right?
Yeah.
That's the guy's name?
Yeah.
Really screwed him over. It really threw him for a loop. And they can't figure out how to deal with that guy. For those not familiar, this is the guy. He's seen in a bunch of videos he's telling everyone to go into the Capitol. And people are wondering why he wasn't criminally charged. And now it's at the forefront, and they have no answer.
There was people calling him feds the day before the event because he was calling for violence and destruction of government property before the event. During the event, he's on camera calling for property destruction and storming the Capitol.
And people are chanting, Fed, Fed.
Yeah.
And Thomas Massey basically streamed this video from his phone when he was talking to who was he talking to? The head of the Attorney General. And then Ted Cruz picked it up. I think I find Glenn Greenwald's analysis of this pretty compelling, that it would be quite typical for the government to do this kind of thing. But I think in terms of the politics of it, I think it's pretty weak sauce going into the election. Going back to my earlier point, if you're looking at empty grocery shelves and you can't afford to feed your family, and maybe you've been forced out of your job because of a vaccine mandate, all the drama about January 6th, and I was super critical of anyone that participated in January 6th, and I wouldn't apologize for anybody that was either committing violence or being near it. You just don't do that.
Right. Lock them up.
Yeah, but that said, this is not the Democratic solution to surviving the reelection.
But they think it is.
They think it is. What else have they got? And I get it. They're going to double down, and this looks fundamentally political, and they're going to play their cards and see what happens.
If they succeed, or I got to be honest, if they even try these lawsuits to disqualify members of Congress, and they already are, so I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, but I just think you're asking for serious trouble in this country. Because what happens when you get a judge who says, we agree, you get some lefty establishment judge, and they say, we hear your case. We agree. Madison Cawthorn, you can't run for re-election. What do you think the right's going to do? You think they're going to be like, oh, well, gee, I guess we can't have our representative anymore? Or do you think they're going to be like, screw you, no? And then what happens when you start getting congressional districts where there's no agreement on what the proper ballots are because certain names have been removed from only some of them? What happens when you get one precinct saying you can't disqualify him? That's wrong. We support him. What happens when Republican areas in the district all defend him and Democratic areas refuse? Then what?
Yep.
What happens when they actually reelect him? And then the Democrats are just like, look at this court ruling. He can't. He incited insurrection under the 14th Amendment, Section 3. And they do it anyway. Do you think people just sit back and say, lost this one. I guess we'll carry on?
No, I don't.
They're going to scream, the courts have ruled he can't run. They're cheating. They're breaking the law. And the right's going to say your ridiculous lawsuit is meritless and the judge is wrong, and there's going to be no agreement on what the law actually is supposed to be at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a credible theory to definitely kind of look at and examine here, especially with the Justice Department announcing a new task force for domestic terrorism. The DHS also made some very alarming statements yesterday about domestic bomb production. So, it might not be enough politically, but that doesn't mean that there's something later down the line that still might happen that they have planned to work in bigger political favor. So, there's some people talking about the possibility of false flag domestic, attacks here in the United States to blame the right. And the way things are moving, they're really moving in a very negative way where we are only becoming more divided. People are having more hatred for their fellow American. And the ingredients that are causing that, the corporate media, the social media, I don't see those ingredients going away. I see them only being added more into this larger stirring pot of these globalist elites that want us all fighting and attacking each other.
But you don't have to eat out of that stew pot. That's the key, is to get away from that propaganda.
And away from the hatred, and away from the fear, and away from a lot of the bullcrap. But if there's going to be larger staged events that create victims and casualties, it's going to be very hard for a lot of people to ignore those kind of larger events.
How do you help people keep an open eyeball for that kind of stuff?
It's very difficult. It's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of things working behind the scenes that we aren't even privy to. We don't even know about. And that's asking, how do you put a genie back in a genie bottle?
You got to do something that I've tried to do. I've been super involved in politics for most of my career. I was a Tea Party organizer, and I did a Rand Paul super PAC. I did a Gary Johnson super PAC. And what we've tried to do is leave all of that aside. And, the original aspiration for us at Free the People was to be sort of transpartisan, try to find common American values that could bring people together on various subjects and see if we couldn't just get along on something. And I think the first step of that is, like, if you go into this saying, you know what, I'm Team Red, I'm red-pilled, those other guys are monsters, it doesn't really work that way. So I've tried to spend some time talking to my progressive opponents on some of these issues. I got to say that lockdowns have kind of blown that up, because now we all really hate each other, and it's very difficult to find that common ground. But again, the future, the anti-authoritarian future, we're going to find people across the political spectrum that are fed up with all this crap and want to do something different.
We talk about the left and the right, and then when I look at the political compass, there's actually an up and a down, where the authoritarians, you can have a leftist authoritarian or a rightist authoritarian, but then when you go down, you get to the individualism. And so you do see leftist individualists and rightist individualists. I'm one of them.
I think the left overwhelmingly is authoritarian. There are very few people among Democrats who are anti-authoritarian.
I'm wondering if the line on this quad graph isn't straight lines, but actually, as it goes to the left, it naturally tends up towards authoritarianism, and as it goes towards the right, it tends down towards individualism.
There is a such thing as left libertarianism, but it's substantially less populated because it's a very weird political space. When it comes to the modern version of the left, what we have in the United States today with the Democratic Party and leftist activists is, because they're overwhelmingly collectivist, even the Democratic activists or progressives or DSA types who don't like Biden would support him due to tribalism and collectivism. Then you have the run-of-the-mill lay Democratic voter who doesn't know anything but adheres to the authority out of ignorance and fear. So it's not that they're authoritarian, these people, in the sense that they're, like, we want you to bend the knee and do as you're told. It's that they don't know anything, don't want to know anything, and say, I'm going to do what I'm told by Brian Stelter and Jake Tapper.
Authoritarian follower as opposed to an authoritarian leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I figure there's an audience. I mean, there's people hard set in their ways, and maybe it has something to do with age, where you just stop thinking about the world anymore. You are who you are, and you've accepted that. But I think there's an opportunity, particularly with young people. I'm trying to be an optimist here, so hang out with me for just a second. I think a lot of young people are searching for something else, and I think there is a small L libertarian solution where we can sort of accommodate our different cultural differences, and you can be conservative, you can be liberal, you can be all these different things. as long as we agree to solve problems on the local level and live our lives however we see fit, as long as you don't hurt people or take their stuff. And that ultimately is the libertarian solution. I'm selling T-shirts too tonight. Sorry.
It says don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
It's a simple message that I wish more people would just understand, and that's literally a lot of people's philosophies that if they instituted would create such a better world.
Yeah.
Just don't steal. That's that simple.
But it's got to be like, I don't think that's a political solution. You're talking about changing hearts and minds, and talking about a little bit of humility when we deal with other people who may be confused about using the power of the state to force other people to be vaccinated. For people whose minds are still open, we should talk to them. And that's the opportunity here. For people that are hardened authoritarians, you can't. They're done.
Yeah, you gotta make art
here's a question
that
I have.
transforms them.
What on this show, that you may have seen, or you guys, has been conservative? Is saying defy the state and the authority, is that conservative? No, absolutely not. Opposing vax mandates, is that a conservative position? No, that's a tribal political position, I guess. It's a liberty position. It's interesting to me that many of the people we're trying to convince have this view that this show is conservative when we rarely, if ever, talk about like abortion and taxes and traditional family values or anything like that. Yet somehow that's what we're accused of being. That's what they say when our discussions are almost always libertarian.
You could argue, I think, that opposing vax mandates is conservative because it's like this weird liberal thing where they want to change the whole way the system's built, and we're like, yo, natural immunity is a thing. There's other ways. Let's not rush this.
But that's not conservative.
That's kind of like the let's conserve our energy. Let's slowly move through this.
Traditional conservatism is, and feel free to chime in after I say this. My interpretation is upholding traditional values that help preserve a system that has led to success. That would be protect the system, defend the status quo, and then progressivism or leftism is the way we've usually described it is the left pulls towards progress and the right holds them back a little bit, and they slowly move towards new ways of doing things, but not too much too fast. And what we've got now is the chain is snapped. The right is stumbling back a little bit, only a little bit, and the left has just taken off running like the dog getting loose on the leash. So I don't see anything that we're talking about being conservative because we're actually fairly reformist. We're complaining about the establishment. We're actually revolutionary when we call for the end of the Federal Reserve. So how is any of that
That's
conservative?
amazing. The Federal Reserve is a revolutionary
calling
corporation,
for an end of the
usurped.
Fed is a revolutionary idea.
That's wild.
And they would be like, it's a conservative show. I'm like, bro, you guys are defending massive multinational corporations. How we convince those people, I honestly... We can tell the truth, we can be honest, but short of using their tactics and manipulation, I don't see how you change people's minds.
Make them laugh. That's a good one.
I don't know.
Play music.
I don't think we followed the authoritarians' paradigm because their whole role is to manipulate and scare people into falling in line. And our model is more like Joe Rogan. Let's have a conversation. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I'm going to insist that you start thinking for yourself. And to me, that's our paradigm. And I know it sounds a little hippy-dippy, but we're not going to out authoritarian the authoritarians. We gotta figure out a totally different way to engage people. And I think people that have gone through this 2 years of lockdown torture and all the psychological and personal damage we've done, particularly to children, I think people might be hungry for an alternative. And we're that revolution, but I think our tactics are different. We respect people enough not to tell them what to think.
So this is the funny thing, right? The historical left and right. You guys, are you familiar where it originates? The French Revolution, right? Where the people sitting on the right were they were the monarchists, or they wanted to keep the system sort
the
of
aristocracy, yeah.
Yeah, and then the left was the revolutionary, communist, lefty types. The funny thing is, we're sitting here saying the establishment is busted and broken. They're bad. We got to vote them all out, get rid of that. We want to end the Fed. We want dramatic revolutionary change in this country. And the quote-unquote left, people like Hassan or Vosh, are saying the massive multinational corporations are correct and we should be forced to buy their products by the status quo establishment politicians. And I'm like, that makes them right-wing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if your economic position is nationalization of a corporation. You are on the historical scale, based on the original definition, the right wing defending aristocracy, and we're here complaining about it.
Fascist, absolute fascist.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.